During our time together, we have been learning about how Jesus has victory. And during our kids spot, that's when we'll learn about the different things that Jesus has victory over. But today we're going to learn the next bit about what happens after Jesus is arrested, he is questioned, and then he is sent away to be killed. But before we do, it's a good idea to remember that the Bible tells us before God made the world and everything in it, he had a plan to save his people. He knew that people would turn their back on him and say, "No, God, you're not the boss of me." The Bible calls this sin. And if we sin, we get punished. We get in trouble by God. And the punishment for sin is death. But God did not want this for his people. God wanted to save his people. So many years ago, God made a promise. And after many years later of waiting, Jesus was born. Here is Jesus, the King, who would show victory over everything. Now, Jesus did a lot of amazing things. He taught people, he helped people, he showed his power by stopping the storm or healing people, and he raised dead people back to life. But now the time has come for Jesus to do the greatest thing, to take the punishment for our sin, the punishment that we deserve. So let's read in the Bible the next bit that's about to happen. So I'm reading from Mark chapter 15, starting at verse 16 to 21. It says, "The soldiers led Jesus inside the courtyard of the fortress and called together the rest of the troops. They put a purple robe on him, and on his head they placed a crown that they'd made out of thorny branches. They made fun of Jesus and shouted, 'Hey you, King of the Jews!' Then they beat him on the head with a stick. They spat on him and knelt down and pretended to worship him. When the soldiers had finished making fun of Jesus, they took off the purple robe. They put his own clothes back on him and led him off to be nailed to a cross. Simon from Cyrene happened to be coming in from a farm, and they forced him to carry Jesus' cross. Simon was the father of Alexander and Rufus." So before this has just happened, Jesus was being questioned by some leaders, and they didn't think that Jesus deserved to die, but they still handed Jesus over to be crucified, even though he didn't do anything wrong. The soldiers wanted to make fun of Jesus, this King of the Jews, so they put a purple robe on him, because purple means royalty, and they gave him a crown, but not a crown like this that he deserves, but they made a crown out of thorns and sticks and things like that. I've just made a little something from the garden. They put that on his head, which wasn't very nice for him to wear. And they made fun of him, and they hurt him, and they spat on him. That doesn't sound very good at all. But this was part of God's plan. When Jesus was put on the cross, he was having victory over sin. Jesus took the punishment that we deserve and put an end to sin on the cross. When we trust in Jesus and believe in him, Jesus has victory over our sin. There's nothing that we can do to save ourselves from our sin. There's nothing we can do to save ourselves from the punishment that we deserve. The only thing that we can do is trust in Jesus, our King. Trust that he died on the cross for our sin so that we can be friends with God forever, because only Jesus has victory over sin. I don't know about what you're thinking, but I think that's pretty incredible and amazing. And for someone to do that for me, to die on the cross and take the punishment that I should have, I cannot stop thanking Jesus for this.